Here's today's Reddit story. It's from the subreddit Traumatized I'm Back. It's titled, Boss says my chemo treatment isn't as bad as all that. I put the evidence in her hand. A few years ago, I needed a course of chemotherapy and was warned to expect all the usual side effects: nausea, fatigue, aches and pain, and of course hair loss. Well, after the first couple of rounds, I was feeling fairly good, not too nauseous as I hate throwing up. My gums had begun to hurt though, and I was starting to notice my hair was beginning to get, shall we say, a little loose. I noticed a bit more on my comb, a little bit more in the shower drain than usual. Now, I usually put this down to regular old male pattern baldness paranoia, but I reckon the drugs were beginning to take effect. Well, a couple of rounds further on, I really knew it. I felt pretty old and creaky, I had mouth ulcers, and my appetite had vanished. Actually, that's not quite true. I occasionally crave a BLT sandwich, squash wafer thin and chilled to near sub-zero temperature. I asked the doctor if this meant anything, and she said yes, it means I want a BLT for lunch. Helpful. However, my hair was still in place, but I could feel it was losing the battle to cling on, even so. Now, I work in a small office, and my boss, Carla, fake name, was a woman in her 40s who was, shall we say, kind of self-involved. She would talk excessively about herself, and the theme was always the same: how hard her life was, and the many insufferable situations she had to deal with. And being forced to listen to a lot of these problems, we all came to the conclusion that most of these insufferable situations were A, basically just run-of-the-mill problems everyone has to deal with, and B, largely self-inflicted. And when it came to work, no matter what the issue was or how it needed to be fixed, it always came back to her and how the situation made her feel. Any given meeting was at least 40% discussing how this issue affected her personally, when all we wanted to do was just get the job done. It got pretty annoying from time to time, but apart from the occasional inward sigh at her behavior, I powered through, until I told her about my upcoming chemo. At first, she seemed pretty cool with everything. I take 3 days off every couple of weeks to stay on a ward for the treatment, and then I'll be back in the office the remaining time. No problem, good stuff. I told a couple of other people in the office too, but I didn't talk about it much. I didn't really want to get labeled as the cancer guy. As the subject is a bit of a downer, I didn't want to bum people out needlessly. Everyone's got something going on in their lives, right? But then Carla's attitude began to change. I began to notice odd passive-aggressive comments she would make mentioning my treatment or my having to visit the doctor. Not much at first, but they began to grow in frequency, and then after a few days, my boss's friend came over to have a quiet conversation with me. She's just finding it very hard to come to terms with your news, she said. It's really affecting her deeply. Just give her some time. I was pretty nonplussed at this, but asked a friend whether my situation was all bringing up some stuff from the past or maybe a family member was ill too. But she just replied, no, nothing like that. She's just a really sensitive person. I told that friend, well, my boss didn't really need to come to terms with anything because it was me having the treatment and not her, and that she shouldn't worry about it. And then I went off for a long therapeutic crap to calm down. Over the next week, my boss's behavior got more passive-aggressive towards me, and slowly a thought began to come through my mind. Surely she's not jealous, right? Surely she can't think I'm pulling focus in some way from her? And now she's upset because she's not able to trump chemotherapy? Because that would be insanely shallow, right? Right? But the more her behavior went on, and the more I thought about it, well, once you eliminate the impossible, as Sherlock Holmes says, right? So things finally came to a head of hair about 2 weeks later. I was at my desk, but feeling fairly rough at this point. I finished a round of chemo 2 days earlier, and my skin was looking pretty gray. My teeth felt wobbly, but my hair was still there, but it felt like it was kind of resting on top of my head rather than anchored there. A colleague noticed I looked under the weather and kindly asked if I was okay, and I replied, I'll be alright, thanks, but I reckon I won't have much hair this time next week. Well, my boss happened to pass by at that moment, and I could see her face screw up as I said it. She then chipped in, Oh, come on. I don't think the chemotherapy is as bad as all that, is it? Now, had this come from a friend, I probably would have let it go. And with my close friends, I made some pretty similar and extremely dark jokes myself, so had they... But that's what you do with close friends, right? But I was not close with my boss. But something just collapsed soggily in the center of me when she said it, and before I knew what I was doing, I stood up and gone over to her, blocking her exit before she could leave the room. I'm not sure, Carla, I said. I'm not sure if chemotherapy is as bad as all that. Why don't we find out? As I said it, I reached up to the back of my head and casually yanked out a giant fistful of hair. Now, my hair at the time was fairly short, but pretty curly, so I had a good old amount in my hand, about the size of an enormous orange. The back of my head suddenly had a huge bald patch, of the type you usually only see in home-cut catastrophe sort of way when the clipper guard falls off. Put your hands across the back of your head now. Imagine all of that suddenly gone and you're in the right ballpark. I held the mass of hair up in the air for a second, then looked at my boss again. What do you think, Carla? I said calmly as I plopped it down in her quivering hand. Let me know. And I just turned and left the now supernaturally quiet office. Carla just looked at the hair in her hand as if it was a grenade. Now, not even a long therapeutic crap was going to sort this one out, so I took an early lunch and stomped out to find a place that could do me a freezing cold squash BLT sandwich with extra mayo. When I got back to the office, the HR rep was waiting near my desk. Uh-oh. I smiled, sat down, and she came over. There was a pregnant pause. She took a breath. A couple of your colleagues let me know what happened with Carla earlier, she began. I see, I replied cagily. Bearing in mind what just happened, the HR lady continued, we'd like to offer you paid leave for the remainder of your treatment. Would that be okay with you? Now, bearing in mind I had at least 3 more cycles of treatment, lasting 6 more weeks, my answer was a carefully considered yes, I believe that would be alright with me, Miss HR lady. Me and my bald patch walked out of the office 10 minutes later and went home. My girlfriend and I called our friends over that evening for some beers and curry, and we all got drunk and shaved my head. Though I looked weird, I was pleasantly surprised to find my head didn't have too many weird bumps on it. Anyways, to cut to the chase, the rest of the treatment went well. Everything went into remission and has thankfully stayed in remission ever since, so job done. Well done, medical team. I took the time off, got through the treatment, and also managed to find myself a new job at the same time before I had to return. Meanwhile, back at the office, Carly's star was on the wane. Word had gone around about her behavior. She tried her usual tricks, how she'd been misunderstood, how upset she was about the whole thing, but people were noticeably colder toward her, according to my colleagues, and people had started to refer to her as Hairball behind her back. The name stuck. I finally returned to work, only to hand my notice in and leave. On my way out, I tried to be as classy as possible with Carla. I thanked her for the opportunity and wished her well for the future. She didn't say much. I gave her a card and a small token of appreciation. I told her not to bother unwrapping it until she got home. My hair grew back. I returned to my ordinary, regular, run-of-the-mill male pattern baldness paranoia. The new job was terrific, and even now, I still like the ice-cold, wafer-thin BLT. It's unbelievable how self-absorbed the OP's boss, Carla, is. To make about the OP's cancer treatment or chemotherapy treatment all about her. You're not the one who is going through the chemo, it's the OP. And if he is feeling the way he's feeling, he's entitled to feel that way. But to try to switch it around and make it about you or how you feel, that's just so self-absorbed. And you deserve everything that you got, Carla. I mean, people telling people that they misunderstood the whole situation. No, clearly people who were there to witness the OP pulling out the hair and put it into your hand after you made that comment that the chemo treatment can't be that bad. Wow, I don't think anyone can misinterpret that. And you deserve the cold shoulder or the cold feeling that you're getting from everyone. I don't know how long you would last in that job, but you really need to look at yourself in the mirror, Carla, and do some self-reflection. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. And remember, if you like this type of stories, to continue to like and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.